现在很多人都说价值投资已死，因为以前的公司主要都是制造业，现在很多发展好的公司都是跟科技有关，他们的估值一点都不便宜。今天我们就听听芒格对价值投资是否还适用怎么说吧。
Jason Subatke, he asked, previously, you have said, quote, it takes character to sit with all that cash and do nothing. I didn't get to where I am going but I didn't get to where I am by going after mediocre opportunities, end quote. In the past few years, equity prices have increased significantly, and cash has arguably become riskier due to central banking policy. Have you considered amending this quote or lowering your standards?
Well, I think everybody is willing to hold stocks at higher price earnings multiples when interest rates are as low as they are now. And so I don't think it's necessarily crazy that good companies sell at way higher multiples than they used to. On the other hand, as you say, I didn't get rich by buying stocks at high price earnings multiples in the midst of crazy speculative booms. And I'm not going to change. I am more willing to hold stocks at high multiples than I would be if interest rates were a lot lower. Everybody is.
Cyril Tibbeville, he asked, do you think value investing is still relevant in a GDP decreasing world? And what about passive investing?
Well, that is easy. Value investing, the way I regard it, will never go out of style, because value investing, the way I conceive it, is always wanting to get more value than you pay for when you buy a stock. And that approach will never go out of style. Some people think that value investing is you chase companies which have a lot of cash and earn a lousy business or something. But I don't define that as value investing. I think all good investing is value investing. It's just that some people look for values in strong companies and some look for values in weak companies. But every value investor tries to get more value than he pays for. What is interesting is that in wealth management, a lot of people think that if they have 100 stocks, they're investing more professionally than they are if they have 4 or 5. I regard this as insanity, absolute insanity. I find it much easier to find 4 or 5 investments where I have a pretty reasonable chance of being right that they're way above average. I think it's much easier to find 5 than it is to find 100. I think the people who argue for all this diversification, by the way, I call it de-worsification, and which I copied from somebody, and I'm way more comfortable owning 2 or 3 stocks, which I think I know something about and where I think I have an advantage.
We have David Thompson, and he says, you've said several times that the best way to learn about business is to study the multi-decade financial results of great companies. You've even said business schools that don't adopt this method are doing their students a disservice. Would you mind elaborating on how a professor or individual should go about building a curriculum around this approach? What, for example, would you recommend as course materials?
Well, here's what I meant. And by the way, the Harvard Business School, when it started out way early, they started out with a history of business. They'd take you through the building of the canals and the building of the railroads and so on and so on. And you saw the ebb and flow of industry and the creative destruction of the economic changes and so on and so on. And it was a background which helped everybody. And of course, what I'm saying is that if I were teaching business, I would start the way Harvard Business School did a long time ago. I think they stopped because if you taught that course, you'd be stealing the best cases from the individual professors of marketing and so on and so on and so on. And I just think it was academically inconvenient for them. But of course you should start out by studying the history of capitalism and how it worked and why before you start studying business. And they don't do that very well. I'm talking about the business schools. If you stop to think about it, business success long-term is a lot like biology. And in biology, what happens is the individuals all die, and eventually so do all the species. And capitalism is almost as brutal as that. Think of what's died in my lifetime. Just think of the things that were once prosperous that are now in failure or gone. Whoever dreamed when I was young that Kodak and General Motors would go bankrupt? You know, it's incredible what's happened in terms of the destruction. And of course, that history is useful to know.
Vishal Patel in Toronto says, I enjoyed your Caltech interview and wanted you to elaborate and provide more insights on your point of great investors and great chess players. How are they similar or different? And Vishal also wants to know, Charlie, if you have seen the television show Queen's Gambit on Netflix.
Well, I have seen an episode or two of the Queen's Gambit. And what I think is interesting about chess is, to some extent, you can't learn it unless you have a certain natural gift. And even if you have a natural gift, you can't be good at it unless you start playing at a very young age and get huge experience. So it's a very interesting competitive field. And I think that great investment, I think people have the theory that any intelligent, hardworking person can get to be a great investor. I think any intelligent person can get to be pretty good as an investor and avoid certain obvious traps. But I think that I don't think everybody can be a great investor or a great chess player. I knew a man once, Henry Singleton, who was not a chess champion, but he could play chess blindfolded at just below the grandmaster level. But Henry was a genius. And there aren't many people that can do that. And if you can't do that, you're not going to win the chess championship of the world. You're not going to do as well in business as Henry Singleton did. I think some of these things are very difficult. And I think, by and large, it's a mistake to hire in investment management to hire armies of people to make conclusions. Better off to concentrate your decision power in one person, the way the Lilu partnership does, and choose the right person. I don't think it's easy for ordinary people to become great investors.